Welcome, everyone. This is your pre-trip webinar for your upcoming trip to Morocco. First of all, I'm going to introduce Beth. Second of all, some pre-trip information tips that you need, packing and so on, documents. We'll talk about your arrival into Casablanca, and I'll touch on the itinerary. We're not going to go into the itinerary in great detail because you will have read it by now a few times over, and all of the pre-trip information documents. So you'll probably be already well prepared. But if you have questions, obviously this is the most important part of this webinar, is to address any questions that would be of interest to the whole group. And so we'll spend a couple of minutes at the end addressing any questions that would be relevant to the whole group. If you do have questions relating to your specific booking, your travel arrangements, those questions are better addressed to Paula or Melody or Aura in our office, whoever you've been last corresponding with. So on that note, Beth, good evening. Beth has, in the meantime, hosted a number of trips for us and has gotten, I can honestly say, rave reviews from our members, which is no surprise. That's why we chose Beth in the first place. Beth, you want to give us a brief synopsis of your travel past and your hosting for Wheel and Anchor?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be on this call. I'm really excited. And I mean, I'm sorry that I can't see your faces and you're seeing like two faces of me. But I am a pretty experienced traveler. I've been traveling since I was a child with my family and then as a young adult, which I think is very similar to a lot of the backgrounds of many Wheel and Anchor people, that we traveled with backpacks when we were young. And I've been with Wheel and Anchor for just over a year. And it was baptism by fire. I did a number of trips last year in Europe and Asia and to Turkey. So I've been to Morocco before, but not with Wheel and Anchor and not since I was a very young woman. So I'm really looking forward to this trip with all of you.
Yeah, you're going to have a marvelous time. And just for those of you who are new, who haven't traveled with us before, just want to clarify what Beth's role is as a host. The host is there. Other companies call them tour managers or tour escorts. And that role applies here. But for us, a host is much more, because a host is meant to be part of the group, part of the adventure, there to obviously make sure that all of the detailed arrangements that we have done in advance in this trip, and we've run this trip a number of times, we think we've got any kinks that might otherwise have existed worked out. But with travel, anything can happen anytime, anywhere. And the host is there to be the person that bridges any gaps in service delivery issues, anything that could come up during a trip, because, it's called expect the unexpected. So that's the main role of the host. The host is there to try to help you, understand the kind of things that you might do when there's free time. And we have free time in various spots on this trip. And when I say that, Beth is, as she said, she hasn't only been in Morocco once before. Beth is not our local guide. So Beth is not the person that's going to tell you how old is that Kasbah, how high are the dunes in the Sahara Desert. We have wonderful local guides, specifically a national guide who's going to be with you through pretty much the whole trip. That is the person, it's going to be a he in this case, who is going to give you all of the local details and all the rest of that stuff and really point you in the right direction. But Beth is going to be there to facilitate your enjoyment, the connection of the community. We are all about connection. We're all about meeting people, having a great time. So I think I'll start off. You've got your passport. If you've had it recently, if you've been down south or somewhere, you'll know where it is. So just make sure it's handy. You don't need any visas for Morocco. You can literally just show up at the airport and take off. That being said, I always do recommend to make a copy of your passport on your phone, like take a photo of the info page, maybe print out a hard copy. And that applies to any other documents that are critical to not only the trip, but to your own personal well-being. So e-tickets, in this day and age, you don't really need to print e-tickets anymore. Honestly, I never do, but I always have a copy on my phone, just in case the airline needs some information that you otherwise wouldn't have committed to memory. Similarly, I always think about prescriptions for medication, sometimes passwords for your Google account or for whatever email account. You need to get a hold of somebody, you lose. you don't have connection on your phone. You need to use the laptop, the computer in a hotel or or wherever you happen to be. So just think about what would I need if I lost my stuff. God forbid that that's going to happen. It thankfully doesn't happen in most cases, but we just want to be prepared with having extra copies of any of that stuff. But otherwise, you're pretty good to go as far as documents and passport and so on and so forth. The question, of course, is what do I pack to go to Morocco? So Beth, maybe you want to start off touching on a few things. I'll fill in the gaps for whatever it is.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. I'm happy to do that. I love packing because I
That
love
makes one of
being
us.
like efficient at it. So am I? That makes one of us. Yeah. So this is actually like a great time of the trip for me. So one thing to keep in mind is that it's going to be the weather is going to be spring-like. It's going to be mid-teens to mid-20s, except when we're in the desert where it's going to be colder at night. If you've traveled with Wheel and Anchor before, you would know that it's very casual. The primary concern is that you are comfortable, and so we really encourage people to travel with layers, be able to be warm or cool off. The one thing to keep in mind in Morocco is it's pretty dry and it's pretty dusty. So you probably want to have at least one pair of closed toe shoes, and especially in the desert, the sand can be hot on your feet. Um, yeah, so that's something to think about. We're going to be there we're going to arrive just at the end of the rainy season, so I'm not anticipating that we're going to be rained on a lot, but there still could be some rain when we're in the mountains. So you may want to have a light jacket that's at least water resistant, if not waterproof. Um, Morocco is a more liberal Muslim country, but still you want to have an option to be more modestly dressed, especially if we visit a mosque or more traditional settings. You probably will feel more comfortable to be able to have long pants, or if you wear skirts or dresses, something like knee length, etc., be able to cover your shoulders or your arms. It's recommended that for women that we would have some kind of a headscarf to wear, especially if we're visiting a mosque, that it isn't always required, but it's always appreciated. So I think that's something for us to keep in mind. For those of us that are sun sensitive, which really is probably all of us needing to be like take care under the sun, but like a hat, sunglasses, sunscreen. I mean, you can definitely find sunscreen, as I'm sure you all know, when we're traveling, but it will be more affordable and you'll be able to find the kind that works well with your skin if you get that from home. I think that covers it. Oh, a couple of the places that we're staying will have pools. So you would like to, if you like to go in the water, even if you're not a swimmer, but you're just like a hanging arounder,
A cool
then
off, a
a
cool
cool
off.
offer, then to bring a bathing suit. I think you'll be happy to have that along with you.
Exactly. And the one thing to emphasize that Beth said is that the one place where the temperature swings are a bit more extreme is in the desert. So and this is this fallacy that those who haven't traveled to the desert, you think, oh, desert hot. Desert in the evening can be quite cold. In fact, it can be in the single digits at night. So the only place that you might need a slightly warmer jacket, and we're not talking about a parka that you need in Canada in February, but something lined or layers, like we always say on trips, layers is critical, so that you can cover up arms and whatever, and even legs, like long pants, which you would need potentially for going into mosques and so on. As Beth said, it's more liberal country, but a pair of light slacks, something like that, to be comfortable in the desert at night would be important. We put in the pre-trip information document, and again, we talked about all of this in the pre-trip information document. If you haven't read through it in detail, I do suggest you take another look and make sure you're clear on that. The electrical adapters in Morocco are similar to those in Europe, so it's 220 volts. So you need to bring a adapter for that, and you can get those pretty much anywhere. I get them at Dollarama, to be honest with you. You don't need anything fancy for that. Because most of your gadgets, your phone charger is maybe the most important thing, will work on 220. If you are planning on bringing something a little more unusual, well, I shouldn't say unusual, maybe unusual for me, but not for you. If you have anything with a heating device in it, those things typically or sometimes will not be dual voltage. So you want to just double check. But electronic gadgets, anything made in the last 10 years or more is dual voltage. So you won't really have any issues there. Good. Let's talk about money for a sec. Beth, do you want to chat for a minute about the money, or is that?
Yeah, sure. So the local currency is the Moroccan dirham, and it's only available. Like I know sometimes we like to get some of the money in advance, but that's very difficult, if not impossible, to do from here. But don't worry about it. You can easily get it, including at the airport from ATMs. So it's recommended that you would have obviously a credit card and a backup just in case your particular bank card or ATM card didn't work in some places. It's like Morocco has modern banking, like as do most countries at this point, but you just never know. And especially because we're traveling very much off the beaten path and we're going to small places. So you want to have a couple of options just in case your primary credit card or bank card doesn't work. And we recommend it's a tool that most of us at Wheel. Thank you, Gordon. Advanced to Wise. We recommend the Wise card if you're considering a bank card and getting an additional secondary one. It's one that many of us at Wheel and Anchor use and find really great because it has excellent conversion rates, and it's a really nice card to be able to use. So it's something to consider if you haven't already done that. If you're thinking about it, the time is nigh to do it because it can take a little bit of time to come. And then you just want to be able to set it up before you leave. But it's really an excellent tool. You load it up and then you can withdraw cash and use it. Otherwise, you can assume that you can use your credit card or a bank card often, but in some of the smaller places, like whether it's like in the souk or in some of the small shops, or when we're in smaller places, you're going to want to have a little bit of cash. Also, some of the washrooms will need to pay a little bit of money to use the toilets, so you want to be able to have a little bit of small currency on your person.
Exactly. Having that loose change, whether it's, to buy sort of a token souvenir, or as you say, to use the facilities in the souk or wherever, always handy to have a bit of cash. On that note, tips is always a question that comes up, as you probably are aware, and if you're not, reconfirm. All the gratuities for the services that are provided by us in the course of the trip are covered. We already built that into the price, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. Your drivers, your local guide, the gentleman that will take you around for the majority of the trip, and any tips here and there, we've got that covered. Beth will have that covered, so you don't need to worry about that. The only other place that you would need tips is to the extent, that there are meals that are on your own, and there are those scattered through. We like to do that because it's important to go out and explore on your own. Tipping in Morocco is similar to that to Europe, which is you essentially round up modestly. So, if the bill comes out to 950 dirhams, which would be an expensive meal, relatively speaking, in Morocco, then you'd round it up to like 1,000 kind of thing. So sort of like less than 10%, 5 to 10%. The majority of the population there have extremely, if somebody does something nice here or there, throw them $1 or $2. What does it mean to us? Nothing. What does it mean to them? The world. So that's kind of my thought. But isn't this not like to that holds the door, you need to give a tip? That's not the case in Morocco. And as I say, to the extent that, let's talk about, Beth is going to explain to you, we do emphasize that you bring your mobile phone with you. It's important for a couple of different reasons. One is because we send out an update to what we call the daily, which is the daily itinerary on a night basis. So you're speed, and she doesn't have to run around looking for people, particularly when it's a free. Now, you can rely on the Wi-Fi that exists in all the hotels, all the accommodations that we're going to be staying at for the trip. However, particularly I think about Marrakesh at the end, where you have free time, you're out Dukes. But in any of the cities, Chefchaouen online, use Google Maps to navigate your way around. It just gives you a little bit more comfort. So you have a couple options. You can use your SIM card from home and then simply have one of their own like home plans. All the Canadian carriers have them. They work in Morocco. It's expensive, right? So I think it's about $17 a day is what they charge you to use your plan from home abroad. The far less expensive alternative is to get a local SIM card. The SIM card obviously is the little plastic bit here that fits into the side of your phone. The SIM card is essentially your phone number. It's essentially your mobile plan. So you pop that out. You can buy one locally. In fact, when you exit the baggage claim and the customs area in Casablanca Airport, immediately in front of you, you'll see a few mobile phone shops. Orange, another one called, starts with an I can't remember it off the top of my head. They'll be right there. And they're pretty much all the same. And for about $10 US, you can get a card that's good for the entire duration of your trip. I think it's in total, and gives you 10 gigabytes of data, which quite honestly, my experience of members on other trips, nobody uses 10 gigabytes of data. So it would be more than enough to do everything you need for a price that's basically the cost of one day of roaming with your plan from home. So that's what we recommend. You can also, many of you that have newer phones that are made in the last couple of years, have the ability to get an eSIM. So it's the same thing, except that it's a digital SIM card. You can pre-purchase it online. We don't recommend a specific one, only because the technology is fairly new. It does work. I rely on an eSIM basically everywhere I travel. A lot of our members and a lot of our hosts use one called Airolo, AIROLO. We don't endorse it. We don't, but it seems to work. So that is another option, because you can buy it in advance and then literally you can activate it as soon as you hit the ground in Morocco and then be immediately online. So those are your options as far as communications. Or as I say, you can just not get a local SIM card if you're comfortable with just relying on the Wi-Fi in the hotels and the restaurants and everywhere. You're good to go. So Telegram, Beth, you want to just elaborate a bit on Telegram and the
Yeah, sure. So Telegram is an app. It's basically an app that allows people to text with each other and have conversations. It is required as for all guests on the trip, on all Wheel and Anchor trips, to download and use Telegram. And the reason for that is it's the way that we can communicate with each other efficiently and easily. It's also, we use Telegram versus using Google Mail or Messenger or something else that maybe many of us are already using, because it just keeps our conversation around the trip separate. And you can delete it later if you don't like it or don't want to have it. And it is a very secure app, so you can feel confident in that. We've been using it at Wheel and Anchor, I think, for a few years now. And the thing about Telegram is that there will be 2 channels. One of them will have it's where I will communicate all of the updates. It's where the itinerary, which is a living document, will live, and all of the changes. And sometimes they happen because of a change in weather or the itinerary, or moving times around, etc. So I update this as we go, and each of you needs to be able to access that and have that information. And then there's a chat channel that's set up where you can all talk to each other and to me. And it's a place where people share information and crowdsource things and say, hey, I found this really fantastic thing, or I'm out eating at this great place, and does anybody want to meet me, etc. So I know that sometimes people don't want to have another app, which we really do appreciate, but we've now made it required because it really allows people to be connected. And also, if there's some big change and we're leaving early or we're leaving later or from a different place, trust me, having done 6 trips now, I know the beauty of Telegram and the difference that it makes for people having actually a great time. So what you need to do is also connect with me on Telegram. So far a few people have done that. So thank you very much for doing that and saying hi. And then I've added you to the chat and the channel. So if you haven't already downloaded Telegram, you want to do this before you leave Canada, because it will be not impossible, but much more complicated to do, and not something you want to be thinking about when you're just arriving in a country and you're ready to have a great time. But the reason you want to do it in advance is because you need to be able to verify through your existing telephone number that you are who you are. So please download Telegram, and say hello to me, and I'll add you to the channel, and we'll take it from there.
Amazing. Okay, thanks for that. I think that's pretty clear what needs to be done. And those of you who traveled this before, you know this already, and it's really important. I'm going to touch on health protocols really briefly. There's just a couple of things I want to say about this. One, no smoking on our trips. And when I say that, is like, lots of people in Morocco smoke. If you're a smoker, you'll be in good company in Morocco. But when we're traveling together as a group, we just ask, because the vast majority of our members are non-smokers. So just please don't smoke around the group. And listen, we're as Canadians, it's almost a shock when somebody does, and there's no problem with that. Yeah, I think that's a sort of a no-brainer. The next thing I wanted to say is, if you should develop a symptom, a cough, a sneeze, anything like that, even if it's something that is, you're accustomed to, we just would ask that you bring and wear a mask at those occasions, because I don't, I say this over and over again. We've all been through the pandemic. We all know what it's like to be, particularly in a plane or on a bus or in a train, and somebody's like packing up a lung next to you. It's just an uncomfortable feeling. So it's just the appropriate thing to do. Let Beth know if you're feeling at all unwell, so that we're just aware of the situation, and we can just make everybody feel comfortable. Just respect for our fellow members. And then the last thing is, if you should at any point have a minor accident or injure yourself in any way, please let Beth know. We want to return you home in the same condition or better than you left. And so minor things like scrapes and cuts or sprains or whatever can seem to be minor, but at the same time, we just we'll emphasize the need to just double check and see a clinic. And you'll all have a travel insurance, I'm sure. And it's better to be doubly sure that everything's fine. In these climates, I always find you want to get, particularly if you get a cut or something like that, can easily happen. You stub your toe or whatever, you want to get something put on it, and an antiseptic or something like that. I know a lot of our members take a lot of that stuff with them, but just let Beth know, and then jointly sort of decide what to do about it. It's just, yeah, we just again, for your own benefit. All right, let's move on and talk about the arrival process in Casablanca, and then again I'll touch on sort of some highlights from the itinerary and what to be aware of. In the 24 hours before you depart on the trip, please take note of your email, because the airlines these days will typically advise in advance if they anticipate a delay. And this is the beginning of April. We're not out of winter yet. Officially, yes. Unofficially, anything could happen. So if there is an event that should cause your outbound flight to be delayed, many of you will be flying via Montreal and then on the flight down to Casablanca. If you miss the connecting flight and you're not on the arrival flight, that's when it's really, really important that you alert Beth by telegram, so that she can then make sure she knows what's going on and advise the transfer driver that you're not there, so that we're not in a panic looking for you at the airport when you didn't make the flight, and then we'll rearrange accordingly. So that's that's in advance the most important reason to have Telegram handy, enabled, log onto the Wi-Fi if there's any delays like that. If your flight is 15 minutes late or even an hour late, but you're on the same flight, we'll know that. Our driver will know that. They're obviously monitoring the arrival time, so you don't need to notify us about that. It's just if you're not on that flight that you're supposed to be on. That's the most important thing. When you get into Casablanca Airport, you will go through the usual immigration customs formalities, and you'll come out into the baggage claim area, and there will be a driver there who has a sign which will say wheel and anchor, or your name, or both. Look out for either or. If you don't see them right away, depending on how many flights arrive at the same time, it can be a little bit busy. So just look around for them. Don't panic if you don't see them immediately. They are there. We haven't lost anybody. If there's any issue, you can't locate your driver. The instructions are on the transfer voucher document that you got. So that's the one that you want to keep handy, just to be able to refer to. So you can send a message to Beth, who will be in Casablanca a day before. You're arriving a day before, Beth. So she'll already be there and can just make sure that that we find you and that you're looked after and you're brought into the hotel. And that's about all. The time difference from Canada to Morocco is obviously similar to Europe. So it's about 5 hours from Eastern time zone. You may want to consider using an app like Time Shifter, which is what many of our hosts use to help adjust to jet lag and adjust to the new time zone. It just means that you're better able to cope with the time difference flying over. So that's just a little tip from our end. So you'll arrive into Casablanca. You'll be brought to the hotel. Beth will be there to greet you, and you can enjoy the facilities of the hotel. They've got a spa in there. And relax and catch up, and then get ready for the big adventure. Just covering the itinerary again. You've seen this already a bunch of times. Obviously, you know where Morocco is, at the northwestern part of Africa. Casablanca, the capital here, which is where we fly into and out of. We will make the overland journey up to the north, up to Chefchaouen in the Rif Mountains, and then down to Fez. This trip, this is an important point, has a number of longer drives, particularly the drive between Fez and the Sahara Desert. You're talking about 6 to 7 hours. There is no other way to do it. So just be prepared for a long drive. And if you are somebody that tends to get motion sick, or normally not, but sometimes yes, then you may want to prepare yourself accordingly. Some people take oral medication to prevent car sickness. Some people use bands or patches. There's various options, but do keep that in mind. Sometimes the roads are bumpy, as you can well imagine. For the most part, they're pretty decent, but again, long drives. So we will obviously make rest stops. We're not driving 6 hours at a go. There'll be adequate stops for nature breaks and so on. So just consider that in your mind if you're going out on a long road trip, what you would need. So as I say, you'll be up in the north, that long trip down over the eastern edge of the Atlas Mountains down into the Sahara Desert, and then back up into the eastern side of the mountains, Khadra Gorges, Bolmanidades. Then you'll cross back over the Atlas Mountains to Marrakesh. My favorite city, or one of my favorite cities, where you'll spend the last few days before transferring back to Casablanca for your flight home. And so, as I said, I'm not going to go through a lot of details on the itinerary. If you have questions, obviously ask them. The highlights of Morocco are many, because we're there for the culture. It's Muslim culture, as Beth pointed out, but it's very liberal there. Some places more so, some places less so. But the Moroccan people are generally very friendly. That being said, they're friendly, but they're also, you'll find that the merchant sellers, the hawkers, can be in some places a little bit aggressive. And so, one just needs to sort of, as I always say, look straight forward. Thank you very much. Don't even look them in the eye. You just sort of keep walking. They can be aggressive, but in the end of the day, they're polite. So they're not harassing. So do keep that in mind. We won't spend a ton of time in Casablanca. We'll have a night there at the beginning, which will largely be at the hotel just to rest up, and we'll have a night there at the end before your flight back. We will go and see the Hassan Mosque, which is quite an impressive. It's one of the largest mosques in Africa, an amazing spot. Casablanca, otherwise, is not a terribly touristic city. It's why we don't spend a lot of time there. I can't even tell you the feeling, that the charm of the city, of wandering around the streets. And so you're going to see all the highlights. You're going to see the Spanish mosque, but you're going to have lots of time to be able to wander around, visit the markets, the souks, and and soak in the city. It's arguably one of the nicest on the trip. I'm a big fan of Marrakesh, but I think Chef Chouin is a lovely one as well. Then you'll be moving on to Fez, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Medina in the center of the city, going all the way back to the 9th century. Tons of narrow, winding little streets. This is a bit of a tourist mecca, even more so than Chef Chouin. So you will find that it's a fairly busy place at this time of the year. The market's full of spices and foods and crafts and all kinds of different stuff. The tannery will be a highlight, because this is where they make some of the leather using very traditional methods. All the natural dyes and all the rest of it. It's a super cool place. You'll have plenty of time in these cities to explore some of this. You'll then have that long drive down to the Sahara Desert, and then once you're out in the desert, this is an experience unto itself, right? You're 2 nights in the desert. You're staying in a tent. It's all very comfortable. For a lot of people, this is a highlight of the trip, because when do you get the opportunity to visit the Sahara Desert? What parts of the Sahara Desert can you actually visit that are still very safe? Not many, quite honestly. So this is where you'll overnight at the camp. You'll be served outside under the sky. The night sky is incredible. If you're somebody that's into stars, you may want to bring some binoculars, or I would say bring a telescope, but just staring up at the night sky is, for me, one of the absolute highlights of visiting the desert. You'll have the opportunity to go on a camel ride and or a 4x4 ride in the dunes. Again, converse with Beth if you have any concerns about that. Obviously, these activities are safe. Otherwise, we wouldn't offer them. That being said, camels are a little bit unpredictable creatures. So they can sometimes, kind of like a horse, but just less comfortable. But again, we make it as comfortable as possible, and it's truly a treat of an experience. When we head back, the scenery as you go through Talper Gorge, go Mount Adadis, and you see all these wonderful adobe kasbahs. Kasbahs are the fortresses that we'll visit some of them. Remarkable places. You'll see these villages in the mountains. As you'll recall, some of them were damaged, not so much in the areas that we were in that earthquake that happened last year, or year before last in that case. So you'll see some fantastic scenery. As I mentioned, the kasbahs, the fortresses. You'll get a long and detailed history about the significance of these and all of the traders and that that crisscross through the desert and over the mountains. Marrakesh, which I think is an amazing city. I truly enjoyed my visits there in the past. Again, lots of sights and smells and sounds. You're right in the center, not far from the old souk, where you'll undoubtedly get lost. And when I say lost in a good way, you can wander around there literally for hours. And there's all kinds of neat things to bring home. So you may want to leave some room in your suitcase, whether it's some spices, anything that's dried, you can of course bring home. Obviously, you can't bring home any, live plants or animals or meats or anything like that. But certainly spices are what's really a big part of it. One of the things that Marrakesh is famous for, the tagine. You'll eat tagine more than once. I love tagine. It's basically a casserole type dish that is more like a cross between a casserole and a soup that's cooked in one of these clay pots. You'll see them everywhere. They'd be a great thing to take home if they weren't so bloody big and bulky. So, unless you have a really big suitcase, I would avoid buying them of those. But they are really cool. And you are staying throughout. I wanted to mention as well in riads. in most of the places, not in Casablanca, obviously. And the riads are the traditional Moroccan homes for the nobility. So they are typically in a square formation around a central courtyard. The rooms will all be different. So this is not like staying in a hotel. So some of them will be a little bigger, some of them will be a little smaller, some of them will be on the second floor, some will be like they'll be all over the place. So just do keep that in mind. We purposely choose riads as opposed to conventional hotels because that's really such a big part of the experience of being in Morocco. If you have any concerns with your accommodation, obviously bring it to Beth's attention, but just keep in mind that everybody's room is going to look a little bit different because that's how these buildings are. And you'll be comfortable in any event. Again, I think our members from past trips were thrilled with the riads that we've chosen. And then you'll end up back in Casablanca. And that'll be sort of the end of the trip with the visit to the Sultan Hassan Mosque that you see here. Incredible structure. Yeah, and that will round out the trip. You will have a marvelous time, and Beth will ensure that you have a marvelous time. And we can now take some questions. And I see a few have come in already. So if you've been thinking something you want to ask, you can put it in either the chat box or the Q&A box. It's all the same to us. Oh, I don't see the Q&A box anymore, but Zoom keeps changing. Okay, yeah, I found it now. But so Kevin and Louisa asked about how much cash to bring. So I would bring, I mean, this is a little bit arbitrary because at the end of the day, the biggest expense that you're going to have cash wise is any trinkets and souvenirs that you might want to buy. So if you're somebody that doesn't really shop much for souvenirs, you're not that interested, you could probably get away with the equivalent of a couple $100 per person. Because some places you'll be able to use a card for eating out at night. Dinners in more local places, which is where we, suggest eating as opposed to, international restaurants, are relatively modestly priced, a little bit less in the smaller towns and villages that we're visiting, a little bit more in Marrakech, but a couple of $100. And I can understand not wanting to get it from the ATMs, but I would have that as a backup. You can exchange cash as well. The best place to do that is at banks, as opposed to exchange booths, because the exchange booths, the rates. I definitely would not exchange money in Canada. You're going to get hosed, quite honestly. So you can bring Canadian dollars and exchange them at a bank in Morocco. I wouldn't also go and change money into US dollars and then into Moroccan dirhams, because you're just going to get dinged on the exchange rate twice. And so that's kind of why we suggest using a Wise card or an ATM card, because you're just going to get the best rates. You're going to save a lot of money that way. But the long answer to a short question, a couple $100. If you're somebody that shops more, you might want to bring a bit more. You might bring $400 or $500. Kevin Louise has asked as well, who do we advise the team in Toronto regarding on arrival? Who do we advise on the team in Toronto regarding an arrival time change? No, if you have a change of your arrival time, please communicate with Beth. Because basically anything that happens once the trip starts or once you depart, Beth will take care. Because she's going to be in situ, she's going to be on site in Casablanca. So she will be the one to sort of facilitate any changes that are necessary. Because obviously our team in Toronto, if you arrive in the morning, it'll be the middle of the night back home. So we don't unfortunately have staff 24/7. So Beth is the person to get in touch with. Again, that's the importance of having Telegram. For the bus journeys, is there a microphone so you can enjoy the commentary from the local guides? Absolutely. So there is an audio system in the buses. They're going to be making commentary, not 6 hours in a row on your way from Fez to the Merzouga Desert. Yeah, you definitely have commentary in the bus. Let's see.
Yeah, there's one question.
Helen, on April 2nd, what time is our group dinner? I'm going to have that handy. The set probably you could do is send out the time of the so that people know on the first day of arrival. Sorry.
No, I didn't say anything. And you're frozen, but what I think you're saying is that I will send it out once it's been set. As far as I know from the itinerary that I have, it hasn't been set yet. As soon as I have that, which probably won't be until just prior to the trip starting. So I'll put that in Telegram as soon as I know it. Okay, so Gordon has dropped off, and the reason I know that is because I don't see him. So I want to check to see if there are any other questions at this
Hello?
point. Oh, hi, Gordon.
There we go. Already. Hi, sorry, got kicked off again.
So I answered the question that we don't know the time of that dinner yet. I don't have it in the itinerary that I have yet, but that I will post it as soon as we know it, which will be just prior to the trip starting.
Yeah, we will take everybody's arrival time into consideration, so it certainly won't be late, but it won't be, we try to go early because you're generally tired on the day that you fly overseas. So, but Beth, you'll send it out in advance so everybody knows. And she'll make sure that she gets a hold of everybody when you arrive so that you're all in communication. If you have Telegram, you have nothing to worry about. You will be informed accordingly.
Mhm.
Perfect. Good. Let's see. Are there any other questions? I think we answered all the questions there that I can see. Let me see another question here. Food dinner. Okay. I think we got all the questions. Of course, as soon as we hang up from the webinar, you may very well have a question. But we want to make sure that you feel totally prepared for this trip. So if something pops up, drop a note to our office, send a note over to Melody. And she will, if she doesn't have the answer at her fingertips, she will certainly find out and get back to you. But you're also welcome to shoot a note over to Beth, same thing. We want to make sure you're well prepared for this trip. Good. I think, is there anything else we need to say, Beth?
No, I don't think so. I just want to another kind of encouragement to sign up to Telegram sooner than later. And then we'll know we're connected. And then, yeah, as Gordon said, if you do have other questions, not so much about your travel arrangements, because those would go to your key contact at Whale and Anchor, the person that you've been working with around the trip so far, but anything about the itinerary, or you're wondering what to pack, or about a SIM card. And I just want to encourage anybody who's like, oh God, what's a SIM card? How does that work? And I don't mean to, because some of us haven't had to do that. And the first time that I did, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to break my phone. But you won't. It's great. I can help you in country with it. I use a digital one. It's so excellent to arrive in country, and then my phone turns on and then I'm connected. So I really encourage you. You've got a few weeks. Maybe you've got someone in your life, if you're not super techie, that can help you with it. But it's possible, and it really augments people's experience. So I want to just encourage you. I will support you. And I'm really looking forward to being with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you again for tuning in today. Thank you for indulging me with my less than ideal internet situation. But we made it through. Have a marvelous time. Do reach out if you need anything. Bon voyage. And we announced our summer social events in the last newsletter. In fact, they'll be ready for registration this coming newsletter. So I just want to mention that. If I haven't met you in person before, I would really love to meet you. Hopefully you can make it out to one of our events in June and July this year. Tuned in our news one, and have yourselves all a great.
I think that was good.
Is wine easy get. So certainly in the hotels, in sorry,
You had frozen. I was like, maybe.
it's
Go ahead. It's good.
we will make sure, Helen, that you are adequately supplied with wine.
Oh, with wine? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Duly noted. Duly noted. Yeah. Thank you. Well,
Duly noted. Yeah. Make sure that make sure that as all will be well.
right.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody.
Everyone. Bye.